Hi and welcome to Car and Mechanical. Today I'm going to take you through how to rebuild your brake caliper. Now I'm going to rebuild mine because the pistons stick in, but we'll go through some bits as we go through the video as to other bits that are involved with this. So you can see the caliper there. Now I've taken it off the car. I've shown how to do this in a previous video, so I'm going to get straight in there and crack on with taking the caliper apart to get to the bits we want to get to. So I'm taking off the first seal stroke, the sleeve that goes over the piston as it slides out. Now I'm trying to do it with some pliers and I'm easing it off with a screwdriver. I do get some of the rubber that's left in there, but that's not a problem. Once the piston's out I can get that out. So you can see that's a bit worn out. Now before we start to move the piston out, I'm just going to show you how you do that. So you've got this lever on the back of the caliper that as you push it, it pushes the piston out. It's actually how it works when you're braking. Now before we push it out, also I'm just going to show where I'm collecting any fluid that's getting leaked out of the nipple. Now we're going to start turning that lever and you're going to see the piston start to work its way out. So it takes a minute or so as it works its way out. Now one of the things just to note is you can see the corrosion that's on the piston, and that corrosion is part of the reason that the piston was sticking and not retracting as it should do. So with it not retracting as it should do, it meant that the pads were wearing out about 3 times quicker than you'd expect them to on that one side. So at the beginning of the video you do see some fresh pads on the car, so I did an emergency change when I wore down to metal again. Left it a few weeks and got myself a full rebuild kit. So we're going to get the piston out. It's nearly there. You can see it's cleaner further down, and I could have cleaned this up, but the difference on the rebuild kit was about £10 for the seals or £20 for the seals and a new piston. So now the piston's out, we're going to move on to taking off the bleed nipple. Now this is going to be worth coming back to later on, however this was a bit of a pain, it was really tight. So I'm going to put some plus gas on there after I've cleaned off some of the loose rust as well. So I'm just using a wire brush and I'm just working off any of the loose rust that might be around the edge there. So as I was turning it, the calipers tightened into a vice and it just wouldn't shift. So I'm just going to put about like a drop or something like that of plus gas on. You don't need too much, literally just a little bit to go around the edge. And it's just some penetrating oil and it just gets in there. I mean, I'm using a socket this time, but it does pretty much undo straight away. So that crack came straight off. Now I'll come back to the bleed nipple bit later on, because there was a bit of an issue with this one. I don't think it had an issue overall, but it is relevant. So now we're going back to the actual caliper, and you can see how messy everything is. We are going to clean that up, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the seal. It is a little bit dark to see there, but there's a rubber seal that just runs around the inside lip. So I'm just using a screwdriver just to loosen it off, and we're just going to pull it out. And where it kind of looks okay, you wouldn't want to reuse it, and you can see some of the wear and where some of the various bits of corrosion and road dirt and grime have got in there. So the first thing, we're going to clean it up. So we're using a bronze brush there, and give you a bit of a better view with the torch. So you can just see everything that's in there. So we want to get that corrosion cleaned out, the little sort of white furry stuff. So I'll clean it with the brush. I'm also using some brake cleaner and sort of a brush and anything I can just to get it in and to work it out. You want to ideally get this looking like it's new before you put your new seals back in. You don't want to leave anything that's going to impact your new seals and your new piston. So clean, 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 brush, 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 and rinse and repeat. Once I'm done, I turn the caliper upside down and I just spray up vertically just to sort of blow out anything that might be left in there. You might need to do that however many times just to get it all clear. So that's the actual new kit. So you can see the different seals there. I actually only use most of it. I don't take the back of the caliper apart. And the new seal just sort of goes back into where you took the other one out from and work it in nice and slowly. I found it a little bit difficult and a little bit slow work to do. So you can see me fiddling about there. But as you do get it pushed in, it found a little bit of a bump and I just worked it round. And it did just fit in nicely. So I just cut across there to where it does go in. So that's your main seal in. Now the next part we're going to go across to is we're going to go across to switching over the insides of the pistons. So you can get a special clamp that undoes the little bits inside the piston. So just undo it very slowly and place it down and make sure it doesn't ping off because it is under a sprung load. So just use my finger to keep that there. As I put these down, I'll do it almost in order of 1, 2 and 3. So I've got the first circlip off there. There's actually sort of 2 rings there. I'll put them down next to it. And then this sort of bearing shaft thing that the piston goes onto, it was a bit stiff, so I had to give it a bit of a tug. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to pull it out in different pieces, but it just come off in one luckily. So that's the old piston we're taking apart there, and it's done up in a wooden workbench. Those are the 3 bits I needed to take off. And we're going to put the new piston in a minute, but I'm going to treat that a bit different in the workbench to protect it. But before we do, there's another little seal on the back of that little shaft assembly that goes into the piston. So I'm going to sort of struggle there, but I put the new seal on that came with the rebuild kit. And now we're going to put that into the new piston in a moment. But I'm just also going to show a comparison of the old piston on the left and the new on the right. So that will just drop in. You're just going to push it in with your finger and it will click. Make an audible, nice feeling click. Then we're going to put on the other 2 sort of outer bits. So I'll look up the name and put that on the screen for you because I'm using thingy and stuff as descriptions, which isn't great. And then we're going to use the circlips, and you're going to close the sort of spring up. It takes me a moment to do that off the screen. And you're going to put it in, you're going to place it all of the way down, and then you're going to release it. The first time I tried that, I didn't quite get it right. So I had to re-grab it and then push it all of the way down, which is what I'm doing there. However, using the torch and a better view of the camera, I can sort of show that. But it has to go all the way to hold everything in place. So that's the piston rebuilt. I'm going to put the sleeve on whilst it's not going back into the caliper. It makes it easier for when you put it in a minute. So work that over the edge. And you position it any way you want. I think maybe halfway down is a good place to position it. In a minute we're going to move back over to the bench with the caliper and we're going to show that being worked on. So you put your piston on and it's got like a leading edge that goes around, and you're just going to work your way around and you're going to get that sort of pushed in. Again, this is one of the ones I found a bit fiddly. Maybe your fingers are a bit more dexterous than me, you've got a bit more patience or a bit more skill, but you will work it round and it will find its way in, and then once it's in you can start to push the piston down. So there's a few different tools you can use there. So this is actually sort of a tool for bikes, but it nicely starts it off. You can use a piston wind back tool, but the piston's quite a bit far out depending on your tool. Or you can just use some sort of adjustable wrenches, like I'm just showing there. I found the adjustable wrench works quite well, so you just do that again and again and again until you got the piston wound back to the point where it would be able to fit both pads either side of it and the caliper. So moving on now to the slide pins. Now, slide pin on the left you can see looks okay. The one on the right is worn out, so it's got corrosion on it. So it's not worn out, even it's got corrosion that you really don't want to see. So I'm going to put these new covers back onto them, the slide pin covers. We're going to grease them in a second, but before I did that, I did clean up that right slide pin because I think that's part of the reason that the caliper might have started to get stuck. And I haven't replaced the slide pin in this video, but I think it's something for about £5 I'm going to do just to ensure that I don't get any future issues. So these little covers, they just pop over, you just push them on with your fingers, and then I've greased them back up to make sure they're nice and greased for when they go back into the carrier. And we're going to pop them into the carriers. Again, it just pops over, so just sort of push it over your finger until it meets the lip, and you just push it around and it finds its way on nicely. The top one I found was able to do, as you can see here, in a second or two. The bottom one took me a little bit longer, but it does go on. I mean, so far most of the stuff I've done here hasn't taken us too long whilst we've been watching it. Obviously the odd bit I've done off camera and there's been a little bit of setup, but it is a fairly relatively simple job. So we've got the 2 slide pins on. Now this will kind of illustrate the issue that I saw, but as I push the top one in you can see it springs back fairly quick, but if we look at the bottom one it's a little bit slow. so it doesn't go back as quick as the top one, and that's part of the reason I want to replace it. Even after cleaning it up, it's still a bit slow, so I think I need to get in and clean up the carrier. That's the rebuild. That is it all done. There was a seal for the back of the caliper. I've not used that. I didn't feel the need was there because I could see that everything was wrong with the piston. I didn't want to create extra needless work. One of the other things I found when we were bleeding the system out is that bleed nipple was blocked up. Luckily, had a spare from a spare set of brakes that I was going to use at one point. I was able to swap that over, but we couldn't blow any air through it. So when I was bleeding everything out, I did find that to be a bit of a problem, and it might be one just to keep an eye on. All in all, I think it's a fairly reasonable job. A new set of calipers wouldn't have been painted like I painted mine. I wouldn't have had the effect in the wheel. I've had to repaint it, and it would have set me back £50. For about £20, I was able to fully rebuild my caliper, and I'm very happy with the result. Immediately driving away, I could feel that the piston was no longer sticking, and I've been really quite happy with the result, apart from the fact I've got a bit of an issue with my braking system that I think my master cylinder seals have been flipped at some point, but I'm going to cover that in a separate video. Thank you very much for watching. If you do have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below or message me. And if you would like to see more videos, please hit the subscribe button.